Today, I'd like to tell you about one of my favorite stories that I encountered playing point and click adventure game Norco. Norco is a real life area outside of New Orleans, characterized by the presence of a large oil refinery that's constantly sending up plumes of fire when it releases gas. The game is set in the near future cyberpunk dystopia of New Orleans and the outlying areas. You play as Kay, who ran away from home but has since returned after learning that her mother had passed suddenly from cancer, and she's trying to find out what happened to her brother, who has mysteriously disappeared since. On her quest to find out what happened, she ends up at a local dive bar, as one often does, called the Floodgates, where she meets three of the locals: Brett LeBlanc, private investigator, who we will be talking about today, Gus, the bar owner, and Keith, the conspiracy theorist. LeBlanc tells you that he has information for you, but he won't be telling you unless you buy him a beer. So you talk to Gus and get Brett another beer, after which he tells you that it tastes like piss, but he's not complaining, it's just an observation. But he's still going to drink the dog piss flavored beer. The other patrons at the bar point out that Brett himself smells like piss, but Brett LeBlanc says that is not possible, since he covers himself in cologne every day. A true mark of a gentleman is wearing excessive cologne. After getting him two beers, he finally tells us the information that he has, that he had seen corporate security breaking into your mother's house after she died and taking something out in a box. Now, everybody in this neighborhood that knows LeBlanc knows that he talks a big game about how he's a killer. He's always ready to jump into action to stop crime. But for some reason, this time he didn't. He just brushes it off and says that he was busy. The game at this point will let you move on with the story, but if you insist, he will tell you a second time that he's a very busy man. But if you keep insisting, he'll tell you the story of what really happened. You see, LeBlanc has irritable bowel syndrome, so he's always on the toilet, and he has a window looking out. So that's when he saw the corporate goons removing stuff from your mom's house. He tells the bar that he hadn't even started wiping, and that you need to have a clean ass to fight crime, and nobody wants to see him running down the street covered in poo. Well, he's not wrong on that one. So the one time he had a chance to stop a crime in progress, he just sat on it. Afterwards, he asks you for some more food, and you get him a basket of fries, to which he replies that he wanted a sandwich. Charming. Lovely, Brett. So the events of the game continue on, and you run into him much later, after you're attacked by your mother's old robot, Millions. He had heard you scream and is able to intervene by unloading his pistol into the robot. When you regain consciousness, you realize you're in his office. After catching up, he tells you that he's always suspected Millions to be functioning as a spy for the wealthy family, the St. Clairs. They own the company that made the robots, and they would never have let one go rogue and just disappeared. He tells you that you're looking kind of rough and that you should splash some water on your face. But looking around, you realize there's no sink in this room. There's only a toilet in the same room next to the man's desk, all together. So Brett was suggesting that you should be washing up from the water from his toilet. And then you notice the massive window. Well, it's not really a window, but more like a hole in the wall next to the toilet. So that's how Brett was able to keep an eye on your mother's house. He was always on the toilet looking out the window. He mentions that the neighbors hate it, but he had told him to just look the other way. Ain't like he's making them watch. He adds that he thinks that his neighbors like his hole, that his hole keeps them connected. There's a lot more that he could say about his hole. Hell, he could stand here all day and talk to you about it. So, having a toilet in the same room as his office kind of tells you a lot about the man you're going to be working with. Looking around some more though, you find some face paint on his desk. He says that he was saving it for the weekend. Later on in the game, you find out that Mardi Gras is only a couple weeks out, so it's already Mardi Gras season. So it makes sense that people are getting ready. But if you keep interacting with it, he says that there's nothing wrong with clowning up after hours. Interact with it some more, and he cannot contain himself. He picks it up and puts on the clown makeup. So, for the rest of the game, when he's in your party and you're working on the mystery, Brett will be wearing full clown makeup. You return to your mom's office, where Brett points out that there's a functioning military-grade Wi-Fi signal jammer. If you take his offer for help to deactivate it, he'll whip out his pistol and unload 3 pistol rounds into it, at point-blank range, in a small enclosed room right next to you. Brett never let safety get in the way of things. When you revisit Duck, You encounter two guards outside blocking your entrance. This is the second iteration of the Garrets. From the cult run by Kenner John, they've swapped out their blue polos for medieval costumes, so they're both dressed like knights. They point out that Brett looks like a goddamn degenerate clown, to which Brett replies that his clown look is timeless. Just a spoiler warning for the events at the end of the game Norco from here. In our last encounter with Brett, we see that he's been mortally wounded, with injuries inflicted upon him by Papa. Upon closer investigation, you can see blood running down his face mixing with clown makeup, kinda undercutting the seriousness of this entire situation. He tells you that he has one last request. Well, multiple kinda request. He wanted you to not let anybody know that he had died from injuries that he'd gotten from an old perverted son of a bitch, Papa, the ditch man. The ditch man had stabbed him, the man that enjoyed living in the wet canals of the city. Gus might think that's funny. So instead, he asked you to tell Gus that he had died to a giant raccoon or some other large swamp animal, just not an alligator. If Brett died because of an alligator, it would mean that he didn't know the swamp very well, and he wanted Gus to know that Brett knew the swamp better than Gus did. So don't let anybody know that he died either A, to a perverted old man, or B, to an alligator. And slowly, as he bleeds out, poor Brett's time on this earth comes to an end here in the middle of Lake Pontchartrain on a rocket headed to space that no one understands how it was built out here. I like to think that somewhere up in heaven, there's a private investigator with clown makeup sitting on a shitter, looking out his window, gazing lovingly down on us, protecting us, and always watching through his beloved hole in the wall. And with that ends the story of the best and worst detective in video games of Brett LeBlanc. I'll be making some more videos about this game, Norco, which I had a blast with, so you know what to do for that. I've had a lot of fun with this game. I personally lived in New Orleans for a while, and that's where my family from, so it's kind of cool to see this homage in video game form. Let's le bon temps roulette. So what do you think? Should I make more of these? Thanks for watching. Later.